Hey guys, so probably for the past half a year, maybe even up to a year, there's been this kind of a sentiment in the game that the support class is really just super OP and provides way too much for the party and needs to be either nerfed or in some cases, some people actually think the support class should be completely removed from the game and support elements should be built into the DPS classes themselves. Now, I completely agree on the fact that supports really are, really overpowered, really strong, right? If we think about it this way, right? A DPS character provides kind of like two main things, maybe a third. So damage, right? DPS provides most of the damage. It provides synergy. So DPS classes provide, sometimes like crit chance buff, crit damage buff, that type of stuff. And then they provide some sort of buff, right? Every now and then. Maybe like a striker gives like an attack speed buff every now and then, or like a war dancer does that. Kind of rare, but for the most part, doesn't really exist. And sometimes it does. And if you're talking about like Gunlancer, they do provide a little bit of like shields and mitigation, but I'm going to talk about most DPS classes in the game, right? So they really provide this to the party. It's kind of only three things at the most, right? Two things on average. But if we look at the support class, they provide a lot of things to the party. They provide mana, they provide damage, they provide damage reduction, they provide damage mitigation. So mitigation and reduction are different because you have reduction, which is like DR effects like Rhapsody, for example. Damage mitigation is like shielding or like, Guardian Tube for bards, right? They have some damage mitigation there with both the shields and that buff. They provide attack speed, move speed, which also comes from Yearning, which is, they give even more attack speed, move speed, and even more damage, right? So supports are really just an extremely loaded class. They have a ton of stuff that they provide, and really no other character provides this type of buff in the game to this kind of like level or extent, right? Now, I think that the possibility of there being a change in terms of like, will there ever be a situation where supports are going to be changed and nerfed and reworked? I think that's probably very unlikely, unfortunately. And here's why. So, at the moment, we have a very much, for the most part, a thriving game. I wouldn't say that the game is doing amazing, but at the same time, I think the game is doing relatively well. I think that there's, especially in Korea, right? It's doing very well in Korea. I'm not even talking about here in the global version. In Korea, it's doing very, very well. Lots of people are playing it. It's a top 5 game over there. It's doing well. So there's that. Over here in the West, it's doing okay. I wouldn't say it's doing bad. I think it's one of the better performing MMOs right now, but definitely not like super, super amazing, but doing well. As a result, does there really need to be a change, like a drastic change to the game? Probably not. But you could say like, oh, okay, you can balance the game, right? You can make supports a little bit less powerful, a little bit, nerf them in some way. But I think that pretty much any change to the support will be a drastic change to the game. Which again, what I said earlier, unless there's something really broken and there's not, many people playing the game anymore, or a lot of people are quitting, they're probably not going to make a drastic change to the game. So here's why I think that any sort of change to the support is going to be a drastic change to the game. The game right now is balanced completely around supports, right? I think that every piece of content in the game, whether it's the way a class works, whether it's a way a boss works, all that is balanced around a support and how it works in the game right now. So classes with their kind of like specs, like, Igniter Sword or like Sura Breaker or something like that, all of that is balanced around the support and the Yearning buff, right? I think that if we had like, I don't know, no Yearning, for example, let's say we take out Yearning, right? Well, what happens is some classes like maybe like Igniter Sword, for example, would probably not really be a spec in the game anymore. It would be way too clunky and, we wouldn't be able to provide them with the move speed and attack speed that they need to make the class work, and as a result, the spec might fall out of favor. You could say, okay, well, for every class like that, let's give them an attack speed and a move speed buff to make up for the fact that they're lacking that. Well, are we just going to give it to those classes specifically? If so, that's kind of like, one, a lot of changes to a lot of classes, but two, if we, other classes might see it as an unfair thing. Well, they're losing, everybody's losing yearning, right? Whether they're a class that needs it or not. But some classes are going to be affected by it more, and some classes are going to be affected by it less. So let's just say Smilegate's like, okay, well, if you're going to be mad, fine, we'll give it to every single person in the game, every single class in the game. Well, now you're going to get a situation where every single class and their balance is changed. So it's going to affect things like, for example, busing. You might not really need a support in your bus anymore. So busing is going to be a lot easier because all the classes are going to be stronger. Some of the older content might not work out anymore because, again, it was all balanced around the fact that there's some support, some yearning buff, something there to make it so that thing was there. So the entire game basically has to be balanced around again because you're taking away the fact that you need yearning. It's like, okay, well, let's not touch yearning then. Let's touch mana. Let's give every single class a lot more mana. Okay, that's fine. But supports are still, doing a lot more things. Well, let's take away damage mitigation, right? Let's take away the fact that the supports need to give damage mitigation. Well, now you're in a situation again where a lot of times in the game, the supports giving that damage mitigation was what was required for those raids to work. Like, there's a lot of chip damage in the game, for example. There's a lot of damage that you really can't avoid anymore in the game, and that's kind of like built in the game. For example, like a con gate 1, right? There's that dot that you have, the little dot that makes it so that the more stacks you have, the less healing you get, and you start taking dot damage. Well, supports a lot of times were there to, one, cleanse that, but two, mitigate the damage that you take from that. Well, now that you don't have supports, then that mechanic becomes completely overpowered, and it's going to be really annoying to play around, right? Well, let's take away all those mechanics. But again, that is another major change to the game where supports were filling in that gap. And if we don't have it, it's going to have to change the game completely and really make the game very different. Again, I don't think Smilegate would do that because things are going well, right? And then you can have a situation where, again, if they change it completely or give the ability to provide mana or damage mitigations to other classes by themselves, again, supports might become a little bit more obsolete. So it's a very hard balance to draw between like nerfing and like over nerfing to where like a lot of the things in the game become very hard or impossible to do, or they might have to do a major change to the game. So that's why I really think that is probably never going to happen to us unless there really is like a situation where a lot of players are stopping to play the game. They're not playing a game anymore because of the supports. Because every single thing, basically, pretty much like every small change that you give to support, right? Maybe other than this one right here, mana, like if you remove a damage buff from them, right? That's going to have to change the balance of the game completely. Older content or single player content, you might, let's say you give that damage buff to the characters built in, single player content is going to get completely changed because you need to rebalance it completely for that purpose. And then you get the damage reduction. Again, you'll have to rebalance the game completely, all the bosses, all the characters in the game to make that work out. Basically, because the supports have so much on their plate right now and like provide so much to the party, anything that you change that the support does will pretty much require an entire rebalance of the game itself, whether it comes to the bosses, the characters themselves, the classes, everything. And that is why I don't think that we will ever get a support rebalance, whether it's like a nerf or like a change or whatever. It just requires like the support itself is just so deeply embedded into every piece of the game that any change to the support class itself will require a major change to the game. Again, I don't know if you guys agree with me on this one. This is probably, my take and might be a hot take, but let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think that there's a good way to kind of like nerf supports or change supports to where you don't actually need to rebalance the entire game? Because pretty much every scenario that I draw up, in my mind, needs some major change to the entire game itself and the balance of it. So, as always, remember, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the sub button, ring the bell for notifications, and also I stream every single night on twitch.tv/misoxshiro starting at 10 p.m. PST. So hopefully I see you guys there, but if not, hopefully I'll see y'all on the next video. Alright guys, peace out.